Narrating.
Hey guys, we're back. This is Fallstreak. The peaceful sounds of cooking. Enveloped in the fading rays of sunset, I rest my head against the kitchen table. Though the enticing aroma tickled at my empty stomach, fatigue was also hitting me at full force. My breath slows as my consciousness dwindles into comfortable darkness. Have an eventful day, Aid? The darkness disperses at the sound of plates heavy with food being placed before me. The sun was now barely clinging onto the horizon's edge. Eventful, that's one way to describe it. Today was fun in a lot of ways, but I'm spent. On a different note, did you really make cauliflower again? Can't you switch it up and make broccoli or something? You know this isn't a broccoli house, Aid. I gaze on dubiously as Papa shovels mounds of the puffy white veggie onto his plate. How come we never have snow peas or string beans or something? I scrunch my face up as I push the plate of steaming cauliflower far away from my own. What's wrong with cauliflower? Unperturbed, Papa pushes the plate back to its original location. It tastes like water in solid form. Unwilling to entertain Papa's unusual dietary proclivities, I repel the plate with the vigilance of an Uber-Mensch goalkeeper. Tastes like water in solid form. Papa falls silent at my remark with a gaze that suggested he was recalling a far-off memory. He needs to use more spices. Come on, man. I once told your mother that exact same thing. You know what she told me? I believe that's called ice, dummy. Though I suppose you would know best what tastes like water in solid form, considering how uninspired your cooking is. More spices. Youch! Hope Papa had some actual ice laying around for that sick burn. Eating cauliflower goes against my beliefs. As its name may indicate, cauliflower is a flower, and I'm a staunch pro-flower activist. Even as I utter the words, a memory of our group gleefully plucking flowers by the stream not one day ago flits across my mind. Whatever, he doesn't know that. Learning to like it wouldn't hurt. Papa pushes the plate back again, causing a strange sense of passion to well up inside me, like the desire to liberate an oppressed people from their subjugation. The working class refuses to budge to your demands. We have nothing to lose but our chains. I push the plate away once more and prepare to block its expected return. But our game of tug-of-war abruptly comes to an end. Papa hadn't pushed the plate back, leaving it to sit forlornly at the edge of the table. I used to think little of eating cauliflower too, you know. But after seeing how much your mother loved it, somewhere along the line I began to enjoy eating it as well. It was always the strangest things that seemed to make her happy. A somber ambiance took hold of the room as Papa reminisced. The glorious revolution seems to have fizzled out. Pulling the plate of cauliflower back to me, I scoop a modest portion onto my plate. Anyways, it wasn't like I disliked cauliflower. It was just dull if you didn't defy and rebel against authority every once in a while. Why did Mother like cauliflower, though? Munching away heartily, I raised the question of why she was passionate about such an oddly specific thing. Papa watches me gobble down the food with a healthy appetite for a bit before speaking. To explain that, it's important to understand the nature of our Socotrine. The reason it is a closed world is because the veil of mist that envelopes its boundaries has the dangerous property of distorting reality. It causes you to lose your mind to madness such that no matter how far you travel into it, in the end you always end up coming back the way you came. That's why it's a mystery how my master led the UL refugee convoy to Socotrine. Before that, there was only one way for us to learn about the lands beyond our own. Socotrine's main river, Evite? I'm butchering that word. Papa nods. Your mother was an infinitely curious woman that was very fond of collecting the unknown land artifacts that flowed down E. I'm just going to call it E from now on. Her eyes would always light up in particular whenever we discovered UL tomes. The reason she loved cauliflower had to do with one of those writings. I remember her words. cauliflower has a deep history to it, carrying symbolism in a prominent UL religion. It represents the mythical tale of a virgin mother and the huge white star that guided the people to her child's crib. Your mother always seemed to be talking about things I could never make heads or tails of. Mustering a meager smile, Papa drops his gaze to the ground. Speaking about Mother, it clearly strained his heart. But I can't stop now. Why was she so obsessed with the unknown lands? That probably had to do with her upbringing. Your grandmother was a powerful duchess known for her cunning brutality. Her ambition and influence was such that many feared her rise to power. However, in a plot believed to be orchestrated by a rival old aristocracy faction, she was assassinated, and your grandfather succeeded her. As the spouse of a political marriage, he held ambitions of his own that ran contrary to your mother being the next-in-line successor. So he locked your mother away under the pretense of trauma and mental instability at your grandmother's death. Sequestered in her chambers from a young age, unable to ever leave, your mother was made a prisoner of her own home. Her yearning for freedom was such that even when released from that burden, she was not sated, always longing for more. It's not enough. Those were her words she told me, as if the closed world of Sockatrine were just another cage. She wanted to escape Sockatrine and see what lay beyond. Maybe it's because I've grown up reading her collection for all my life, but did you know, Papa? That's my wish as well. Papa. This tangled knot rooted deep in my chest. I can't bear it anymore. Papa, will you tell me? If I don't ask now, will there ever be another chance? Or will I live the rest of my life carrying this aching emptiness inside me? How? Stealing my beating heart, I forced the words out of my throat. How did Mother die? My desire to know felt all-consuming, like a maddening hunger that could not be sated. It possessed me, pressing me forward despite the crushing dread. You've kept it from me for all these years, but I can't accept that anymore. Please tell me. It felt like I was suspended in time, unable to advance, retreat, or even breathe. But even then, I don't back down. Tell me. Your mother was killed. I killed her. The words hang in the air, a heavy weight. I stare blankly at them. Blankly, I stare. A dark shadow eclipses Papa's face. Fake, a tear-stained mask. Its stifling coldness paralyzes me. I killed her. I try to speak, try to say something, anything, but I falter. Hollow. That's all my words would be. Unable to voice myself, I let the suspended words fall from my lips unspoken. Gone. It was all gone. The clinking of silverware, the warmth of a family peacefully sharing a meal. In its absence, an oppressive silence constricts the room. Leave the plates in the sink when you're done. Without ever meeting my eyes, Papa turns away. Something aches inside of me as I watch him go. Gazing at the fleeting image of his back in the doorway, I sit there for a very long time. The shadows of night's passage sink to their deepest shades before I finally rise from my seat. Hunched over a candlelit desk in Mother's room is where I find him. The candle's flame seems to waver in concert to his rhythmic breaths, casting shadows upon the weathered books that had once been someone's pride and joy. Papa. Though his consciousness was no longer in the room, I call out to him, reaching out to touch his cheek. The false smile from before had fallen from his face, revealing a haggard, hollow countenance. Was remembering her that painful? Even then, he had returned to his room, unable to let himself forget. You're a weakling, aren't you? But no matter how weak you may be, I know you loved her more than anyone in the world. Pulling a chair up beside him, I rest my head on the desk and gaze at his sleeping visage. Distressed, defenseless, it looked so much like the troubled sleep of an anxious child. I want you to tell me more about her. My words do not reach him. He cannot answer, but I want him to listen. Her favorite foods, the little things that peeved her off, whether or not she was a morning person. My consciousness begins to flicker wearily as the day catches up with me. Even if it's little things like that, I want to know all about her. Why, even though I was sitting right next to him, he felt so far away. Sierra Faintsill. Fighting against fluttering eyelids, my eyes find Papa's upturned hand. What type of person was she? I rest my palm in his, noting absent-mindedly how soothingly cold it feels. My hand's so small compared to his. And what happened on that day? For some reason, I was certain. A golden dream waited for me beyond the encroaching darkness. This closed world. I'll break it and behold what lays beyond. For her sake as well as mine. The sound of falling rain. Its rhythmic patterns seep into my consciousness, coaxing my eyes open. My bedroom ceiling. However, something seemed off. The right side of the ceiling looked blurry and out of focus. Huh? When I bring my hand to my right eye, it comes away wet. Tears? Perplexed, I try digging through my memories. Last night, I fell asleep in Mother's room. Papa probably carried me to my room afterwards. I remember being gripped by a strong conviction that I'd return to the golden dream. But that couldn't be right. I always remembered what happened in the golden dream as clearly as my waking hours. But right now, I couldn't recall a thing. A gap in my memories? Distraught, I twist and turn in my sheets, trying to breach the thick clouds swirling in my head. But in the end, I couldn't produce an inkling of insight into what had happened. There's no point going around in circles anymore. Slipping out of bed, I wander over to the window and place my hand against the cold glass. The mellow atmosphere of a rainy day usually soothed me, but today it felt strangely oppressive. As one that relished the feel of the rain's kiss on my face, it mystified me how much the light patterns unsettled me. The rain outside wasn't too heavy, but somehow it felt like the earth was drowning under the downpour. I should get going. Descending the stairs to an empty house, I don my rain gear and set off into the falling rain. A little rain shouldn't be enough to deter us. We always meet up to play on Saturday mornings. Today shouldn't be any different. The thought helps lighten my mood as I proceed down the puddle-lined path. I want to see everyone's faces. Before long, the Rue household fades into view, emerging from a curtain of mist. Something was wrong, though. Standing before the cabin's dark outline under the falling rain was a solitary figure. A figure so still they seemed to bend into the very landscape. A knot of deep unease sinks to the bottom of my gut. It was Noletta. Unblinking, unmoving, she stood there. Noletta? Upon drawing closer, I find her clothes to be completely soaked through. How long has she been standing here, utterly exposed to the elements? Noletta, it's me, Aid. One heartbeat, two, passes by breathlessly before my voice seems to reach her. But the eyes that turned to face me, they were unrecognizable. I did not know them. Vacant and unfocused, they stared through me, looking at something far away, like the glass spheres of a discarded doll. Noletta, aren't you cold? I reach out and grasp her hands. Cold, clammy. Her skin had chilled immensely from being exposed to the falling rain. Noletta? A sharp throbbing within my chest. I realized it hurt. It hurt to see her like this. Let's get you inside. Gently tugging on her, I lead her back into the cabin. Inside, I find Russell huddled in the corner of the room, his head cradled in his hands. Noletta had fallen into a catatonic state, but unlike her, he was trembling uncontrollably in a spell of mania. While I was concerned about him, I needed to prioritize treating Noletta. I had no idea how long she had been out there. Stripping off her wet clothes, I wipe her down thoroughly with a towel and drape a blanket over her. As I go to light the stove, though, a stifled scream makes my heart catch in my throat. Reacting to the stove's glowing embers, Brussel presses his body against the wall. Unable to retreat any further, though, he lashes out frenetically at the nearby furniture before slipping and slamming against the ground. That's when I notice. From the arms he was cradling desperately against himself, something dark was dripping onto the floor below. Illuminated under the stove's flickering light, his fingernails produced a wet squishing sound as they scrape out more of the dripping dark fluid. He was gouging out his own flesh? Stop, Russell! You're hurting yourself! Unable to think of any other way to stop his hysterical self-mutilation, I grab at his wrists and desperately try to restrain him. My efforts only cause him to panic further, though. Stars begin to swirl in my vision as I'm knocked to the ground with such force I momentarily black out. Undeterred, I get up and try once more to hold him down. But, unable to bridge our size difference, I'm blown away like an errant leaf. I have to stop him. He's already lost so much blood. Rising on shaking legs, I stumble forward again. But before I can reach out, my legs give and I crumple to the floor. Brussel. At that moment, something happens. A pale white hand extends from the darkness, wrapping around Brussel's head and covering his eyes. I'm here. Noletta! Noletta! I'm here. Weakly, feebly, Brussel collapses to his knees. But Noletta does not let go. I'm here. Where are you, Brussel? I'm here. I'm here too. Reaching down with her right hand, Noletta touches Brussel's trembling fist. As if cast with a spell, the shaking stops and the two intertwine hands, his bloody clawed hand and her frigid porcelain hand. The darkness is nibbling at me again. It's biting me. It never stops biting. It's okay. I'm here. We're both still here, so it'll be okay. As if grasping for a lifeline, the two tightly clasp hands. Perhaps because I hit my head too hard, it takes a while for me to come back to my senses. Pulling myself off the ground, I take the opportunity to douse the stove flame while Brussel's eyes are shielded. When I return to check on them, I find the two sprawled out, fingers still intertwined as they slumbered. With a sigh full of many different emotions, I crouch over Brussel with a first aid kit I had recovered from the kitchen. That's when I hear the sound of the cabin door opening. Oh, it's you, Mr. Damelior. It's as I feared. Looks like it was particularly nasty this time as well. Though his timing could have been a bit more ideal, I was relieved that he was here. Could you give me a hand patching Brussel up? I'm having some trouble here. Your hands are all smeared with blood, Shao-Ad. So are Chowletta's. Bleeding on young girls' hands is a bad hobby, Brussel. Mr. Damelior shakes his head in disapproval as he washes, disinfects, and dresses Brussel's wounds with practiced ease. Something like this must be child's play for a seasoned war veteran like you. His composure and expertise were on an entirely different level. I am more impressed at how calm you are staying, Shao-Ad. I think weary describes my current state better than anything else. In any case, Brussel should recover from his injuries without any lasting damage beyond some scar tissue. It had been difficult to tell in the darkness before, but now I was able to take my time. I realized there was a lot less blood in the room than I initially thought. Mr. Damelior and I spent some time cleaning up before carrying the Rue siblings to bed and making them comfortable. Talk about high maintenance. Even now, they were both stubbornly clinging to each other's hands. In order to leave their right hands connected, we had placed Brussel in a pretty awkward position on his stomach. It was almost unfair how comfy Noletta looked, all curled up under the sheets. Oh well. Letting the tension leave from my body, I settle down next to Noletta and watch on as her chest rises intermittently in concert to her breaths. Mr. Damelior, I have some questions I'd like to ask about these two. While I had refrained from prying too much before, things had changed with this last incident. I am not certain if I can give you any answers, but continue. I take some time to gather my thoughts before proceeding. Before, you were talking like you knew this could happen. You know the cause behind these episodes, don't you? Indeed, you are not mistaken. Will you tell me why this happened then? Mr. Damalure goes quiet as he mulls over what to say. To explain what happened, I will have to go into their past, which I'm afraid I cannot do. You don't think I have a right to know after this experience? My apologies, but the young master has explicitly instructed me not to tell you anything. I'll have to get creative if I want to parley with Mr. Damalure. I am butchering his name. I'm gonna start calling him Mr. D. Let me approach this from a different angle then. Noletta spends just as much time under my care as Bressel does under yours. Any information you withhold is that much less I'm equipped with to deal with should a crisis arise while I'm with her. It is true that you are the closest one to Ciauletta after Bressel. While Bressel might have you around if something goes amiss, who can Noletta depend on if something happens during the day? For the sake of Noletta's well-being, I insist that you tell me what you can. I make a point of staring firmly into Mr. D's eyes as I assert my position. While your reasoning is sound and your proposed course of action is indeed the most prudent, I cannot disobey an order by the young master. There's no need to worry on that front. Papa's already decided to stop hiding things from me. He told me last night he was the one responsible for Mother's death. Mr. D falls silent. With cold eyes, he scrutinizes my face as if gauging the will between my words. But I don't let a sliver of weakness show. I see. Very well. I shall not disclose any details on your mother's death. It is not my place to tell that story. But I will tell you what I can about the Rue siblings. Having successfully negotiated a favorable outcome, I let myself relax a bit. To understand what the Rues went through, it is important to understand certain bits of Socratrine's history. Are you aware of why the Master's Revolution occurred? I learned in school that the old aristocracy suspected the UL refugee convoy would attempt a coup. The preemptive strike they launched against the UL convoy was the trigger for the Master's Revolution. While that is true, it is not the full story. Relations between the old aristocracy and the UL convoy were congenial at first, but the situation became strained when the two parties were unable to come to a consensus on one issue. That is, Socratrine's closed world dilemma. While the old aristocracy had several factions with different ambitions, they were all united in one desire alone. A way to break the cage of mist that encircled Socratrine and expose the lands that lay beyond. That was what they wished for more than anything else. Is that so? It echoed a desire I carried in my heart, a desire Mother once held as well. The true catalyst behind the Master's Revolution stems from the old aristocracy's obsession with breaking Socratrine's closed world dilemma. The Verloren Master's refusal to assist in this endeavor, despite having led the UL convoy to Socratrine, was a part of great contention. However, even after the Master's Revolution, there remained influential factions in Socratrine, and even the UL convoy that wished to resolve Socratrine's closed world. Under heavy pressure, Master maintained her hardline stance, but was eventually forced to capitulate on one front. A research endeavor into the properties of the reality distorting mist that encircled Socratrine. Its name was Project Benaire. Its primary objective, investigating the effects of Socratrine's mist on the human body through extensive testing. The ramifications of Mr. D's words strike me with almost painful clarity. Are you telling me Noletta and Bressel were subjects of human experimentation? Subject O.N. Blanc and Subject 1B Schwartz. As the original test subjects of Project Benaire, Noletta and Bressel were subject to inhumane experiments from a very young age. They are the only survivors among the pool of children Project Benair drew from. Mr. D's reveal puts me at a loss for words. Their innocence, the reason they seem to know so little about the world. It all made sense now. I run my hand through Noletta's snow-white tresses as she lies before me in quiet repose. When the UL researcher supervising Project Benair perished in the fire of collapse, an emergency containment contingency plan was enacted. Noletta and Brussel were isolated in empty underground units filled with the reality-distorting mist. They stayed confined there without outside contact for years before finally managing to escape. It was fortunate they ran into the young master when they did, as he promptly placed them under his protection upon learning of their plight. Noletta and Brussel only started living on our property about a year ago, meaning they'd been trapped in a nightmarish experiment for nearly a decade. I had no idea. Sensing that her lips are faintly trembling, I brush my fingers against Noletta's cheek, as if to whisk away the memories, the bad dreams. It's not completely known what triggers their episodes, but sometimes they become convinced they're still trapped in that underground space, that everything around them is just a delusion they've invented to run away from reality. Noletta, to think she's been bearing such a burden for all this time. Rain is something I've started keeping my eye out for, but be careful of anything you think might trigger a relapse. If one does happen, don't leave her side. Stay with her and do anything you can to reinforce that the world around her is truly reality. Understood, leave it to me. I won't let Noletta bear everything by herself. A good answer. Chowletta is blessed to have such a formidable friend. You rarely smile, Mr. D, so it's pretty refreshing when you do. I suppose. Mr. D quickly reverts back to his usual iron mask in response to my comment. It made me recall something, a dear treasured memory of mine. Do you remember when Noletta and Brussel struggled to eat anything when they first came here? We couldn't figure out what it was that was the problem. So the four of us held a pasta party where we made everything from scratch. Do you remember? We made a big mess and called you Grandpap the whole day. Did I say that right? Called you Grandpap. Yeah, okay. It was so fun and so delicious, so much that these two never had a problem eating ever again. And it was all thanks to Supermaster Chef D. I suppose that did happen. Mr. D might be po-faced all the time, but he's actually very good at taking care of people, isn't he? I've lived a long time after all. Suddenly, unable to maintain eye contact, Mr. D drops his gaze to the ground. A reflection laid within those averted eyes, a glassy mirror of one's regrets. It was a gaze I was intimately familiar with, a gaze that often lined Papa's features. The gaze of someone chained by the past. I think it's okay, you know. It's okay to find a sense of family in us. You're not turning your back on the dead by doing so. Chawad, aid. Aid. For a moment, Mr. D's iron mask breaks. But he quickly regains his composure. Thinking of me as family, isn't that going a bit too far? Isn't it fine? I think of Noletta and Brussel like family, and I've only known them for a year. But Mr. D's been there for as long as I can remember. That's only because the Cottard household does not properly employ house servants. There's no one as trusty as Mr. D, right? No, well, the young master has always been averse to the idea of employing house servants. But for a brief period of time, the Cottard household actually did try employing one. While they were cleaning, however, they made the grave error of tampering with the books in your mother's study. I do not know if you remember, as you were quite young, but you threw a terribly fearsome tantrum. Ever since, the young master has absolutely refused to entertain the prospect of a house servant. Is that so? Well, I don't regret it, because that tantrum's one of the reasons you're always there for us, right? From my perspective, you are someone who has supported Papa and me for all my life. It's only natural for me to consider you family. Or are you going to try and say a young girl's heart is wrong? No, but tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and think of you as family, and you'll do the same back. Because that's how these kinds of things work. You don't overthink them, okay? You can be quite unreasonable at times, Chow 8. Just wanting to say odd. Maybe it is odd, I don't know. But your words do not ring hollow. I shall take them to heart. So it's okay if we call you Grandpa Pap from now on, right? Ugh. While we're at it, you should try smiling more. You ask too much of me. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. Nope. So show us those pearly whites, Grandpa Pap. Please stop. I do not know how to deal with situations like this. Grandpa Pap! Grandpa Pap! In any case, I will cook up a meal for these two and keep an eye on them, so feel free to take your leave. Are you kicking me out? How mean. No, but if I'm not mistaken, you usually meet up with your peers on Saturday mornings. It would be prudent not to keep them waiting. That's true. If I kept them waiting any longer, they'd probably start to worry. I'll leave these two in your capable hands then. Leaning down, I kissed Noletta lightly on the head. Sweet dreams, Noletta. Her skin had warmed up considerably since I first found her. Look forward to a big tasty pasta banquet when you wake up. Parting with her, I don my rain gear and prepare to head back out into the rain. Make sure you take good care of them, Grandpa Pap. I'm not responding to that. You just did, though. Winking mischievously, I set off into the falling rain. When I'm a good distance away, I stop to look back at the misty cabin one last time. All of it, for the sake of breaking Sockatrine's closed world. I shake my head lightly to dispute the unwelcome thoughts that filter into the back of my mind. What should I tell the others? Though I wanted us all to be there for Noletta, perhaps it would be best to hold off for today. Noletta was resting right now, making everyone anxious to check up on her wouldn't do. And it would also be a big help to save some time to digest everything myself. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this episode, so stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks for watching!